Track 501. Emergency. We are on the ground.
Investigators confirm the train was traveling 80 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. The derailment left 3 people dead.
President Trump unveiled his Trump doctrine on national security.
With this strategy, we are calling for a great reawakening of America.
Patriotism, pride, America first. These are things for 8 years we frankly did not hear.
The GOP poised to pass President Trump's tax bill today.
This is a good tax reform package for all Americans.
All-time highs all around Wall Street. The Dow posting its 70th record close of the year.
We're all kids. We look forward to Christmas.
We do, especially in New York City, right in Midtown. I think it's also interesting that NSYNC must have 25 people on that song. That NSYNC is 4 people, right?
You really focus on how
many. But I mean,
people
it's like,
Brian,
it's 5 people.
They're all in sync.
Right. That is true.
When I listen to a song, I just think I like it or I don't.
Right.
I don't think how many people.
And I just wonder if they're going to all get paid.
Okay.
Yes, they got paid a lot.
They did indeed. All right. Thank you very much for joining us. 6 o'clock here in New York City. It is 3 o'clock in the morning in DuPont, Washington. And we start this hour with a Fox News alert. Speeding to their deaths. Overnight, investigators revealing an Amtrak train was going 50 miles an hour over the speed limit before it ran off the rails in Washington State.
Was going 80 in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. At least 3 people were killed. 10 are seriously injured.
Claudia Cowan is live on the scene, as she has been, with the latest. Hey, Claudia.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Investigators with the National Transportation Safety Board arrived here on site overnight and will spend today combing through the wreckage of yesterday morning's fatal train derailment to try to figure out why 12 passenger cars and a locomotive jumped the tracks. Some of those cars spilling down onto the busy freeway below, and you can see they are still there. And while it will take months to determine an official cause, this train was going too fast. Using data recorder information, federal investigators confirmed the train was traveling 80 miles an hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone, so 50 over the speed limit when it careened into the curve and crashed. Now we are getting to hear those chilling first moments after the derailment when the conductor called in to report it.
Track 501. Emergency. We are on the ground. We are on the bridge. 5 in the square.
That'll do. Easy stop, tack
on the freeway. Need EMS ASAP. It looks like they're already starting to show up.
The derailment killed 3 of the 85 people on the train. 72 victims were treated at nearby hospitals. 10 are listed in serious condition. But we are also hearing amazing survival stories. For instance, a baby on the train escaped unhurt. And many of the survivors are praising bystanders who rushed in to help. One Good Samaritan had training as an Eagle Scout. Another was a neurosurgeon. Dozens of volunteers from a nearby military base also responded and helped save lives. Meantime, President Trump is expressing his condolences and saying the accident, quote, shows more than ever why our soon-to-be submitted infrastructure plan must be approved quickly. Though the Associated Press is reporting this derailment happened on a newly finished track, not a railway plagued with maintenance problems. Still, one local mayor had recently predicted there would be fatalities with high-speed trains running so close to traffic and pedestrians. Back here live, heavy cranes are being used to lift cars and semi-trucks out of the way so they can get this busy stretch of Interstate 5 back open. Detours are causing long delays, and highway officials are hoping that they can get this stretch of southbound Interstate 5 back open later today. Ainsley, Stephen, Brian, back to you.
Wow. Yeah. So, it's going to be very anxious to see if what went into that and if this was actually operator error.
Yeah.
Well, speed, because apparently the early reports were that it left the station on the first day of rail service up there, half an hour late. And the whole idea of spending over $100 million was to get there about 10 or 15 minutes early, looking bad, and then it looks like speed.
This was the inaugural ride, and they didn't have that technology up and running that can slow it down when it goes around a corner automatically. It's up to the operator at this point.
Wow. Meanwhile, at 5 minutes after the hour, you know what? They're not actually, the lights aren't on in Capitol Hill, but they will be shortly. And there's a lot of anxious and sweaty palms because it's actually going to happen. The first time in 30 years, we're going to have tax reform in their country.
Wait a minute.
Right. I guess they're on, but you know what?
They're making the coffee.
I think it's like the refrigerator aisle in a supermarket. When you walk through, the lights go on, and when you walk out, maybe it's just the maintenance guy.
There's a sensor
yes,
in the rotunda?
That's what I sense. But I just think that today, I guess it's going to start in the House, finish off in the Senate. But it's a fait accompli. It is going to be an all-Republican tax reform with no Democratic support.
Looks like they have enough Republicans because Senator Collins and Senator Lee are check marks. They said they're voting yes. Senator Flake says he's not sure if he's going to be on board, but he can be the one holdout. They can afford to lose one.
Sure, absolutely. And I don't think the Republicans thought they were ever going to wind up with any of the Democrats on board. I mean, guys like Joe Manchin come on television and talk about how, well, you know, if they do this and do that, ultimately they never, ever do it. The big question was, were they going to shame Bob Corker into becoming a no? Because the Democrats coined a phrase... No, as a no. Shame him into being a no, because they came up with the Bob Corker kickback, because unbeknownst to him, apparently, in some of the language, was a provision that would benefit real estate investors like him. He apparently didn't know about it, but Orrin Hatch, the Republican from Utah, said, look, that was not put in there to get his vote. It was a month old. Besides, it was part of the House bill. And Corker is going to be a yes. The other two considerations, John McCain still in Arizona. Thad Cochran apparently is back from Louisiana. He missed a vote last week. He is in D.C. He will vote if they need him.
And John McCain said, I will come back if I'm needed as well. So Mike Pence has decided to postpone that trip to Israel. He was supposed to go to Israel and go to Egypt for the Christmas holiday, or at least leave this week. And he's decided not to do that. He's going to postpone it till January, just in case he's needed for the tiebreaker. I
would look for Senator Flake to be a yes. Also, Senator Corker was voted no originally. The more he looked at it, Ivanka Trump deserves a lot of credit for it. It spoke to him. He spoke to the president. He says, look, I'm betting on the American people. I am betting that if you give the American people more of their money, the economy will grow at a rate that will prevent our deficit from escalating, because that was his main thing. He goes, I got elected to control the deficit. I feel bad about in 10 years adding $1 trillion to it, but I also believe that we can grow it close to 3 to 4%. And if we do that, deficit won't be an issue. So they're betting on the American people. They're betting on a responsible corporate America to say, I got the break of a lifetime. I'm going to invest in this country and not make the president who backs us look terrible, because the next man or woman to come in is not going to do this.
Susan Collins said, bottom line, most Maine households will see taxes go down, and that's why she is a yes.
Most of them.
Meanwhile, take a look at a brand new poll from CNBC, of all places. For the first time in 11 years, more than half the country says the economy is good or excellent. 41% expect the economy to improve next year, and 47% approve of the handling of the President of the United States when it comes to the economy. That is up 4 points from just September.
Yeah, the economic optimism up, and so is the president's approval rating. It went up 4% since the month of September. Wonder if they coincide.
Yeah, because of accomplishment, you can't take this two ways. I look at what the market's doing, because they're into this thing called making money. They had another record high as soon as it looks like this was going to be a layup today. So they went up for the 70th time. I thought Dave Pratt, who is an economics professor and knows his stuff inside and out, he beat Eric Cantor to get that position in Virginia. He says the average American family, a single woman with a kid, gets $1,000 back. So if you make $70,000 as a family with 2 kids and you're married, you get $2,000 back. You go through it in every category. He says America is better off.
Yeah, right now, if you're married, you can write off, you get a $12,000 deduction. This is going to double that. You'll get a $24,000 deduction.
And if you're happily married, you get even more.
There you go. So it is Tax Cut Tuesday. They're going to start voting in the House, then the Senate. You'll see it all live right here on Fox. Meanwhile, something you saw yesterday from the Ronald Reagan building, just about 5 blocks from the White House, the President of the United States unveiling what is known now as the Trump Doctrine. And it sure sounds a lot different than the Obama Doctrine not too far long ago. We're going to play a little of that. But first, here's the President yesterday on the new strategy where America comes first in the world.
America is coming back, and America is coming back strong. With every decision and every action, we are now putting America first. We are rebuilding our nation, our confidence, and our standing in the world. With this strategy, we are calling for a great reawakening of America, a resurgence of confidence, and a rebirth of patriotism, prosperity, and pride. With the strategy I am announcing today, we are declaring that America is in the game and America is going to win.
He also said that the world is becoming a much more dangerous place, and it's becoming dangerous quickly.
Done with preemptive wars, he said. I'm not going to look to change governments and make democracies, and we're going to look at people as strategic competitors, not necessarily enemies or friends. Meanwhile, if you want to say to yourself, this sounds different than I'm used to hearing for the last 8 years, let's flash back to President Obama's approach. Tell me what you like better.
There have been times where America's shown arrogance and been dismissive, even derisive.
My job to the Muslim world is to communicate that the Americans are not your enemy. We sometimes make mistakes.
We've at times been disengaged, and at times we've sought to dictate our terms.
I feel depressed already.
Back then,
totally different.
Yeah, no kidding. President Obama was talking about how the tide of war is receding. And yesterday, the President of the United States made it very clear we live in a very dangerous place, and he's going to do everything he can to protect us.
Well, the current president is America First, and that President Obama, was the apology tour. Remember, he called it that.
I do remember that.
Yeah, very interesting, because China and Russia said they don't know really what to make of the speech. They want to wait and see. What China says is, we have learned to watch what the president does. Don't worry about what he says. So that was according to their nationally run newspaper. Meanwhile, hey, Jillian, what are you looking at?
I'm just looking to see if I still have a hit, actually.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
You do not. She's going to have the news
later.
About a half an hour.
Okay.
All right.
All right. We'll see you in a second.
That's right.
It's 12 minutes after the top of the hour.
Meanwhile, they're in the country illegally, and they came here to get abortions. They think they should be allowed, but a judge just ruled on that. You're going to find out about it coming up.
And does America First mean everyone else last? Our next guest helped put the president's new national security policy together. She's here to fire back at some critics.
We are declaring that America is in the game and America is going to win.
All right, President Trump unveiling his national security strategy in a 20-minute speech yesterday, making it all about America first. Our next guest sat in on the meetings on the creation of the plan as it was being drafted and was part of a private briefing on the strategy with H.R. McMaster himself, the general. Fox News foreign policy analyst Chiron Skinner joins us right now to talk about this. Now, you want to push back, Chiron, about what?
The idea that first, that the America First strategy has been abandoned in the national security strategy, that it's inconsistent with the way the president campaigned and inconsistent with what he did in 2017. I think that's important to push back against, because when you read the national security strategy, it is highly consistent with what the president campaigned on, and in that way, his intellectual stamp is absolutely there. And what I mean by this, perhaps he said it not so elegantly during the campaign because he was really trying to convey some very difficult thoughts. He said that, look at the past 70 years, post-World War II, the international system that the United States helped to form, create, and organize. Much of it worked for a long time. While we were organizing the international system, lifting millions of people around the world out of poverty, helping dozens of nations find their way to democracy, we were losing our own way, and it became particularly apparent in the 21st century. And we've got to change the game somewhat so that our interests are protected. We've got to look inward. And that's really reflected in the national security strategy.
Right.
Down to a letter.
Right. But we also had a common enemy there, and it was the Cold War, and we knew you're with us or against us type attitude. Either you're going for the communists, or you dominate or a satellite, or a proxy for Russia within the Soviet Union, or you're not. Nancy Pelosi came back and said this: rather than make America more safe, President Trump today made clear his intention to double down on his reckless and rash policies. Instead of smart and strong leadership, the administration is offering the world only further incoherence and confusion. Obviously, she's not impressed.
No, and it's too bad that she went in that direction, because the emphasis on our economic security being our national security, as reflected in this document. I don't see how she could argue with that. Making our economy robust makes it easier for us to be credible abroad and to project military power. That's not a partisan issue. So I think she didn't really read the document.
Right, but she maybe had that written ahead of time. You also talk about climate change is no longer a national security threat. Preemptive war is not going to be happening. And when you look at Russia and you look at China, you talk about some people you're going to be compete with strategic. We're going to be competing with strategically. How do you want Russia and China to interpret this document?
To read it the way that I think most Americans are reading it, in a non-polemical, non-ideological way. It is a non-ideological document. It is a theoretical document, one that says that all of our policies will emanate from America's interests, and those interests include political and territorial sovereignty and protection of our homeland. Growing our economy, projecting and protecting our values. Everything we do should come from those principles. And I want our adversaries and our strategic partners, the Chinese, the Russians, and others, to understand that America's ideas, that we won't shy away from them, we won't back away from them, that we will use them as a force for good in the world.
While not abandoning our alliances, like, for example, with NATO, right?
Absolutely, and the document says that we want cooperation, international cooperation based on reciprocity. So actually the president's embracing our alliances, not abandoning them.
All right, Chiron Skinner, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, 10 minutes before the bottom of the hour. Fighting the opioid epidemic by going after the people responsible for the overdose deaths. We're treating overdoses as murderers, help America's addiction problem. What do you think? That's next. And this crime-fighting robot just hit the streets. What could possibly go wrong? Turns out...
It is 6:24 in New York City, and we begin right now with a Fox News alert. The Trump administration confirming North Korea was the mastermind behind the largest ransomware cyber attack in U.S. and world history. Wall Street Journal reports the erratic communist country pulled off the worldwide WannaCry hack, as it was dubbed, earlier this year. The attack impacted 230,000 computers, including hospitals and banks in 150 countries, and caused more than $4 billion worth of damage. North Korea behind it. Meanwhile, the Trump administration wants the U.S. Supreme Court to block an illegal immigrant teenager from getting an abortion. The request coming hours after a federal judge ordered the administration to allow that teenager and another 17-year-old illegal in a federal shelter to undergo that procedure. That's some of the news. Now, Ainsley, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Now to a closer examination of addiction in America. Prosecutors are now treating opioid overdoses as homicides, toughening the punishments for the drug dealers and for others that are responsible for that person's death. Our next guest made prosecuting drug-related deaths a priority while he was a federal prosecutor. Former U.S. Attorney for Eastern Kentucky, Carrie B. Harvey, joins us now. Thank you for joining us, Carrie.
Good morning. Good to be with you today.
Good morning. What does this mean for America? Why was this important to you?
It was certainly important in the Eastern District of Kentucky because our region was simply devastated by the opioid crisis. So we felt that we had to use every tool available to fight back against this crisis, and certainly prosecution is not alone going to solve the problem, but a robust law enforcement response is a necessary part of any solution. And so when people sell these poisons on the street and it kills people, there should be severe punishment. We think there's a deterrent effect in that. And I also believe that the, selling heroin and selling fentanyl on the streets is not a victimless crime. It's not a nonviolent crime. And the families of overdose victims deserve a measure of justice, and I think these prosecutions deliver that.
Absolutely. You're going after tougher prison sentences for the people who gave these kids or these individuals their drugs. They die as a result. And to prevent other kids or other people, I say kids because I know some teenagers that are dealing with this, but this affects people of all ages all across the country. It's becoming just an epidemic, as you say. So this is enforcing tougher prison sentences for the people who give them the drugs. Is it working in your state?
I believe it's working. We had at least anecdotal evidence that when we would initiate and successfully prosecute overdose cases, the people in the community that deals drugs pay attention to that. We would, for example, overhear jail calls of drug dealers who were in jail. Those calls are recorded. And when we would prosecute these cases, it would create quite a buzz. Again, tough prosecution alone will not solve the problem, but a strong law enforcement response is a necessary element along with treatment and prevention. So I think that it's a part of the solution, and the more consistently we approach these cases with using the overdose laws on the books, the greater the deterrent effect we'll achieve.
How are most people getting their opioids?
It comes in a variety of ways. There are many people who become addicted to opioids actually through legitimate medical prescriptions. And once they're addicted, then they turn to the streets. I think the statistics, the data shows us that about 80% of heroin users first engaged in the non-medical use of prescription pills. So we know that prescription opioids are the pathway to heroin and fentanyl use.
Because it's cheaper.
And then we see it's just a fact that there are ruthless people who organize themselves into drug distribution networks who are willing to traffic in this misery, and we have to address those people with a very strong enforcement effort, in addition to addressing the addicts with compassion and the health care that they need.
Yeah. Carrie B. Harvey, thank you for joining us, and thank you for trying to help these families and individuals that are addicted to opioids. We appreciate it. Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. An Amtrak train was going 50 miles per hour over the speed limit before derailing in Washington state. There's the result. How did that right there happen? An investigator with the NTSB joins us live from the scene, coming up next. We are back with a Fox News alert. At least 3 people are dead and dozens are injured after a speeding Amtrak train flies off the tracks, crashing onto a highway below.
Yeah, it happened yesterday. The NTSB says the train was going 50 miles per hour over the speed limit on newly finished tracks from Seattle to Portland.
72 people were taken to the hospital, and miraculously, a newborn on board survived unharmed. An Army soldier on the highway jumping in to help save lives.
I couldn't afford to be scared. I couldn't afford to be shocked. I had to do what I'm called to do and focus and channel that into helping these people around me get to safety as best as possible.
Heavy cranes are now being used to lift the crushed vehicles off the interstate.
And joining us right now is Bila Dinzar, board member of the National Transportation Safety Board, reporting live this morning from DuPont, Washington. Good morning to you, Bila.
Good morning. Hello.
I know it's early in the investigation. The crew and the conductor survived, I understand. At what point does the NTSB speak to them about what happened?
Well, obviously, we wanted to make sure everyone is safe and sound, and we really want to thank all the first responders for getting to the scene. I mean, if you were here, I just viewed the scene, and it's a scene of mass destruction, and it's very impressive the work that they did in order to get people out and to save them. As far as the crew, today and tomorrow we'll be attempting to interview them, and we hope that we'll be able to get more information about exactly what happened.
Bella, as far as the people that were injured or killed, were any of them on the road below, or were they all in the train?
We're aware of the fact that all of the deaths were were actually inside the train, but we'll leave the exact numbers to the local authorities, since unfortunately, there were many victims, and as you said, they were dispersed to many different hospitals.
Anyone in an automobile knows sometimes you have to go over the speed limit, or you choose to go over the speed limit. For those of us who don't drive trains for a living, how often do you go 50 miles over the speed limit? How rare is that?
Well, that's a good question. So trains are a little bit different because there's a whole territory you have to worry about, and you have to know the speed profile of each of those sections of the territory. And that's what we're here to find out. We're lucky that there were event data recorders inside both locomotives, and we were able to secure the data from at least one of the locomotives so far. And that's how we know that the train was going at 80 miles per hour in a track which was a 30-mile-per-hour zone.
Right. Bella, any concern about the fact, I mean, this was the maiden voyage, the first trip on the tracks for this high-speed train over these rails that were retrofitted. Any concern about that?
Well, I think that there has been a lot of talk about PTC, or positive train control, and we'll be looking at all aspects of signals from that are related to this accident, and PTC will certainly be one of them. I think that, as many of us know, PTC can prevent many types of train accidents, and we'll be investigating very carefully to see whether it could have prevented the destruction that happened just behind us here.
All right. Thanks, Bella.
Thank you, Bella. Hopefully we'll get some answers soon. In the meantime, let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
Good Tuesday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's get you caught up on your headlines today, starting with this. An Iraqi refugee who wanted to blow up 2 Houston malls will spend 16 years behind bars. Authorities say Omar Faraj Saeed al-Hardan confessed to wanting to plant multiple bombs and detonate them with cell phones in 2014. Al-Hardan also wanted to leave the U.S. to join ISIS with another Iraqi refugee in California. The 25-year-old was granted legal permanent residence in the U.S. in 2011. Nancy Pelosi is so worked up about the new tax bill that she actually bailed on a protest against it. The House Minority Leader no showing at an event that she planned to speak at Monday on Capitol Hill. Even MSNBC pointing out that a lot of things didn't go according to plan. This week, as you recall, Pelosi referred to the bill as Armageddon. The real-life crime-fighting RoboCop now looking for work. K9, a 5-foot-tall robot with cameras and an alarm system, was fired over charges it discriminated against the homeless in San Francisco. It had been used by a nonprofit to deter crime, but people in the city responded by smearing barbecue sauce on its sensors, knocking it over and putting a tarp over it. What do you guys think?
Cool. I also think they got his, I watched the whole thing, they got his gestures down.
Yes,
They really nailed it. Yeah, and that is my favorite exhibit at Disney. You know,
Is it really?
Yes.
All the books you read.
I love going, and they had, like, even in the vestibule, which we call it the vestibule, along with the Victrola.
We don't know what you're talking about.
I'm not really sure. And it's a little round area where they get these great pictures in history and little trophy cases. But it's good to see the presidents in there because there was some type of delay.
I was Epcot, and I was that Tower of Terror.
I think this is over.
But that's a different park too.
What about It's a Small World?
It's a small world. It's by that.
Yeah, I did. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I mean, it's been ages.
That's
it's
Universal.
Been decades. That was Universal. Disney, I just like the castle. I like the castle. Janice went recently with her kids. Do you remember the president thing? Okay.
Yes,
I do.
Right. Thank you, Janice.
We believe you. We believe you that it's there.
We hear her right there. Janice, we've got some extreme weather to talk to you about. Hundreds of people showing up at Lambeau Field in Wisconsin to try and remove the heavy snow before the big game on Saturday against the Vikings with the Packers.
And we learn even more snow and flash flooding could put a snag in holiday travel this week. Uh-oh.
The only thing left for me to do is toss to Janice.
So yes, all of the above are true. Let's take a look at the temperatures. Here in New York, it's 46. It's weirdly warm across the East Coast. We do have some changes in the forecast that are going to happen over the next week or so. But the last 24 hours, you can see a lot of moisture working its way from the Gulf of Mexico across the southeast. The Northwest getting feet of snow, and that's going to move into the northern plains and the Midwest. That's the future radar, and we're going to see inches and inches of rainfall, unfortunately, across the southeast, and maybe some snow across the Northeast on Christmas Day. So there's your GFS model forecast precipitation. A lot of heavy snow for the Northwest across the Rockies and the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. Warmer temperatures will bring a lot of heavy rain across the Southeast, the Tennessee and the Mississippi River Valley. Look what happens, though, across the Northeast. The temperatures are going to get cold, really, over the next couple of days as we head into the weekend. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, as we head into Christmas, that's where we're going to see potentially the snow. Travel delays, East Coast, not only Thursday, but Friday and Saturday. So if you're traveling, just be aware Saturday could be the worst day along the East Coast. And we could have a white Christmas here in New York City on Christmas Day.
Fantastic. That's what we want to hear.
We need to get people there. That's the most important thing.
Thank you very much, Janice.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Janice.
Terrific report. All right. Meanwhile,
All right, 19 minutes before the top of the hour. If he can't play, he might as well own a team, right? The new move kneeling Colin Kaepernick wants to make inside the NFL.
And President Trump says he won't fire Robert Mueller, but should he? And what does the law say? All rise, Judge Andrew Napolitano is here in Studio F, and he's next on Fox and Friends.
Hey, Judge.